Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for sharing this morning with all of us. Before we start, I would like to recognize actually the sponsor of the second bill that we're going to hear. I want to recognize Senator Tilena Nelson. I want to recognize the chief, the major, the lieutenants, the peons, the captains, and everybody else here. Before we continue, those that are testifying in regards to this particular bill, we're going to hear Bill 103-35 LS. So if you're going to testify, you can sign in. And those that wants to take the table up front, just come on up and take your seats. This public hearing is now called to order, and the time now is 9:13. a.m. The Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council of Guam, Infrastructure and Public Transit is conducting a public hearing today on Bill 103-35 LS. For the record, and in conformance with Section 8107, Chapter 8, Title 5, GCA, the first public hearing notice was sent out on Wednesday, January 29, 2020, to adhere to the 5 working days requirement, and the second public hearing adhering to the 48 hours notice was sent out on Sunday, February 2nd, 2020, and in addition to this notice, they were also sent out to the media and posted on the Guam Legislature's website. This particular bill is, actually the author of this bill is Senator James Moran, and hopefully he can be here. This bill is an act to amend 77302A of Chapter 77, Title 10, Guam Code annotated relative to the Chief of Police authorizing to recruit volunteers to assist in enforcement accessible to parking and littering laws under the Natasha Protection Act of 2005. And I was just talking to the senator that, Chief, if you can just acknowledge that this particular bill has been enforced for years already, right? Am I right on that? We do have a bill for the enforcement of parking lots, especially for reservists, police reserve, and all that. So, can you elaborate on that, Chief?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Senator and Chair, and Senator Nelson. Good morning as well. And so we're here to provide oral testimony regarding Bill 103. And so you are correct, Senator. There is a statute that currently exists under Chapter 77, 302, under Title 10, the Guam Code annotated. And pretty much this bill mirrors the exact same language that is found in the existing statute already. In my discussions regarding this bill that was offered by Senator Moylan, what he wanted to do was expand the program to include recruiting volunteers from the Neighborhood Watch program. However, if you look at the statute in 77302, there's nothing that prohibits me from recruiting volunteers or prohibits anybody from the Neighborhood Watch program to come forward and volunteer to participate in the CAPE program. So the CAPE program is the Community Assisted Policing Effort, and that is the volunteers that come forward and work with the Guam Police Department to enforce the littering laws, the disabled parking laws, and the Natasha Protection Act laws.
Chief, do you get any feedback from just how much is being, made financially on the enforcement of the traffic with these volunteers?
So the only revenue that we get is from the disabled parking And so in my discussion with the administrative services officer, we had 2 deposits into the fund within the past year. One was for $600+ and the other one was about $390. So within the past year, we've only were able to collect over a little close to $1,000 in fines under the disabled parking law.
So actually the Cape enforcers are not really active on this, if you will?
Well, they're not as active as before because we're down to we only have 5 volunteers left, but of the 5, it is my understanding that only 2 are actively engaged in the work of the Cape volunteers. So it's not as robust as a program as it used to be, and we don't have as much volunteers as we did when this program was first started back in the early 2000s or around 2012, around that time.
So how many do you have right now?
2 active.
Just 2 active.
5 total, 2 active. Right. We haven't heard from the other 3 in some time.
So are you planning to recruit some more?
Again, the program is always open, and it's just a matter of people wanting to come forward and volunteer their time to do this type of enforcement. In my 12 months in office as the chief of police, I've probably encountered maybe only 1 or 2 people who have actually come to my office, who have come forward and wanted to volunteer to do this type of enforcement effort with the Guam Police.
But as far as incentive, financial incentive for these volunteers, do you have anything planned for that?
No, sir. So this is a strictly volunteer program. This is not like the police reserve program where there's an incentive with the stipend. There's no stipend involved with the Cape volunteers.
And I'm pretty sure that active law enforcement and also the reservists, they do this, right?
Yes, a reservist does have the authority because they are a peace officer. So they do have the authority to issue citations for disabled parking, littering, and Natasha Protection Act.
Okay, before I go on, let me recognize one of my favorite senator in the legislature, Senator Amanda Shelton. Thank you, Senator, for being with us this morning. Chief, is there anything that you have in mind as far as enhancing the, and you did mention that, you're open for volunteers. And I just wanted to know if there's anything that we can put out there to entice these people to be part of that enforcement. Is there anything that you can think of where we can encourage these people through some kind of program or incentive for them to come in and volunteer?
Senator, that's something I can explore with my staff and see if there's any incentives that can be offered. Just a little bit of history. So when the disabled parking, the Cape volunteers first started, what happened is that there was a lot of concern from the public, and for especially those who needed the accessible parking, because the parking was not readily available because others who did not have the proper permission to use accessible parking were using these parking stalls. So it was a collaboration between the Guam Police Department and the members from the disability community, especially with our work with DISID at the time. And it was through that effort that we were able to reach out to there was a program up at Homeland Security, the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT program, which had another spin-off program called the VIPS, VIPS. It's the Volunteers of Police in Policing Service. And so it was a federally funded program. And so it was through there that we were able to get volunteers to work with us and DISIT to get the proper training, along with the traffic court, to get the proper training so that we can go out and enforce. So you got to remember that when we do enforcement, really, the intent is not for us to give tickets and for us to enforce the law. The intent is to gain compliance from people so that they don't use the disabled parking. So I think it's safe to say that over the years, people have come to realize that, the disabled parking is for those people who have the proper credentials to use the disabled parking. And so we find that there's more compliance now with the disabled parking laws.
So the parking violation actually is enforceable on private property, if you will, like, private property like shopping centers and all that.
Yes.
I know it's enforceable.
Yes, sir, it is.
What about what about private properties where accessibility for a particular road is kind of impedes the traffic in that particular area? Can it be enforced to apply the violation for people that kind of just take part of that roadway on a private roadway? Is there anything that is coming up on your part to enforce something like that?
No, sir. So this law deals just strictly with disabled parking, and so it doesn't deal with the easement of roadways. And so that's something that we would do in collaboration with the Department of Public Works, when we go in and enforce obstructed roadways.
Okay. Because, I've seen that in so many occasions, in as far as part of the road is being blocked and two cars cannot just, go one way and the other way. So I'm trying to find out from you if that's enforceable.
That's something that we can enforce again, we have to work with the Department of Public Works just to ensure that, the roadways are properly marked and we can go in and enforce an obstructed roadway. Yeah, there are many instances, like you said, in village roads, side roads, where, people tend to park on the actual roadway or what appears to be part of the roadway. So, we work with Public Works to make sure that the roadways are clear and not obstructed.
Okay, this time I want to ask the Senator Shelton on my immediate left if she has anything for you. And another thing, can we have Mario Kinene to come up?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for being here today and everyone who's here. I appreciate the testimony that you provided today, and since we amended the Natasha Protection Act a couple of months ago, our office has received several calls about enforcing in certain establishments this act, and so I do appreciate this piece of legislation that Senator Moylan introduced, but I understand, as you stated, that you already have this power as the Chief of Police to recruit officers. So my question to you would be, in the bill, starting at page 2, Senator Moylan includes these requirements for volunteers. So are these requirements like the background check, training, and identification, specifying the recruitment and authorization, are these all things that already exist with the CAPE program?
Yes, they do, ma'am.
Okay.
They do currently exist in our general order, which is the set of rules that govern the conduct of the CAPE volunteers.
Okay. And so the CAPE volunteers are equipped with, obviously their identification cards, and they go out with citation books, and is that what they're doing now?
Yes, ma'am. So what we do is, back when this program first started, we actually brought in, we had a full training program, and I think it was at least maybe 8 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So part of the day was focused on the Traffic Violations Bureau, their employees coming in and teaching the volunteers how to properly fill out the citation form, which is pretty much the traffic ticket form. Then the second half of the training would deal with the Guam Police Department, where we would teach the volunteers things on like de-escalation techniques. Of course, because we anticipate that they may come across people who would become upset, maybe become irate, and maybe even aggressive towards them when they're being issued a citation. So what we do is we teach them, how to identify those actions and behaviors, and so we teach them how to de-escalate the situation. Of course, and then at the end of the day, safety is paramount. So if you have to walk away from it, then you have to walk away from it. I don't think there's anything worth you getting injured over a traffic citation for parking, littering, or smoking.
Okay. Thank you. And you mentioned that you were working towards incentives for CAPE volunteers, and can you just maybe give us
So Senator asked, was there any incentive to get these volunteers to come forward to work with us, kind of like what we have with the Police Reserve Program. We currently don't have any incentives in place. This is a strictly volunteer program, And so what I said is I can probably explore if there's any incentives that can be offered. It's something I need to discuss with our staff.
Okay. And so has the CAPE program, in its existence, it's only had 5 volunteers this whole time?
No, there are probably, gosh, when I was at Highway Patrol, we probably had 30, 40, 50 volunteers. We had a very robust team back in when this program first started. But again, back, like I said, back then, there was a lot of interest because we were dealing with the disabled community, and they were kind of like the driving force working with DISIT and the Guam Police Department and the Traffic Violations Bureau at the Guam courts to get this program in place so that we could go out and enforce. Our focus primarily back then was with the disabled parking.
Understand. Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Thank you for the
Yes, ma'am.
information.
Thank you for this questions.
Wake up, wake up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your service to our community, and thank you for the sacrifices you endure to serve our community. Chief, in this, just to be clear, I know it's been mentioned a couple of times, but the actions on this bill is already an implementation that you have taken in accordance with 77302?
Yes, ma'am. This program exists in 77302.
So can you talk to me a little bit about, or perhaps to the community, a little bit about the effectiveness of this implementation, to have a volunteer, for you to be able to recruit a volunteer, and their actions during the course of the day? At any time of the day, could they cite someone for the Natasha Act or for violating the Natasha Act, or cite someone violating parking laws, or is it a certain hour that they must work that they will volunteer for?
So these are strictly volunteers. So the hours that they work and when they come in to do the work is actually based on their availability and when they come in. So, it's not, early on when this program first started, it was not unusual for us to hear that we had our CAPE volunteers giving traffic citations for disabled parking 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Some of them would actually go around and drive on their own time in their own vehicles. And back then, we also had some vehicles, government vehicles that we assigned to them, and they would just go around and patrol the parking lots of these different, especially the business establishments, to conduct enforcement activities related to disabled parking.
Okay, thank you. And then just to note, in the subsection that the sponsor of the bill proposes to delete the volunteers from the Guam Department of Education. Do you support that effort to remove the volunteers' ability to go and safeguard the schools?
So I think it's safe to say that most of the schools are closed environments, meaning after hours, the gates are closed, there's padlocks, there's chains. And so the Guam Police Department has access to the schools. We have a working relationship with the different administrators or principals of the schools. So we have either access through the keys or through the combinations for the schools. So in my experience, I don't know that we've actually had any volunteers who have actually gone out under the CAPE program, who have actually gone out and patrolled the schools or volunteered their time to actually patrol the schools. So it's one of those things that we're authorized to do, but I can safely say that it's not something that it's a regularly done activity, and I probably venture to say that we probably never had anybody actually patrol a school as a volunteer to keep it safe at night when nobody's there.
Right. Thank you, because in the previous years, we've had several break-ins into some of our schools, and so I think that if we get the parents, the stakeholders, the community more involved, perhaps you'll see an increase in volunteers to assist you.
Yes. So one of the things that we're exploring with the schools is that we have the neighbor watch programs in the villages. So what we're working on is trying to incorporate the neighbor watch programs to kind of keep an extra set of eyes and ears also in the schools. Where they're passing by on the way home, or if they're up late at night and they see anything that may raise suspicion in the schools, they can communicate with the Guam Police through the Neighborhood Watch programs.
And when will you be able to implement this, incorporating the Neighborhood Watch program to monitor the schools as well?
Again, it's not necessarily to go in and patrol the school campuses. It's just to report any suspicious activities, to kind of make it part of what they do throughout their Neighborhood Watch program activities.
So it's already being implemented. All the Neighborhood Watch programs in the different villages understand or agree to look out for suspicious
Yes,
activity
it's
after
just
hours?
to help them become aware
Right.
and increase their awareness that if they see anything in the schools, school campuses, that it be reported to the Guam Police Department, either to the Neighborhood Watch Group or to call the Guam Police Department. So it's not them actually going physically on the school grounds.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've given them some training, or perhaps one of your police officers have given them some training on, what to look out for suspicious activity and so forth, or are we just kind of just...
Yeah, no. So we our auxiliary services division, when we start up a Neighborhood Watch program group, there are training that we do provide to the Neighborhood Watch groups, how to set it up, what to look for, and things like that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief, can you think of any other incentive that we can entice some of these people? Because, the numbers of Cape volunteers is kind of just a little bit too low, considering some of the traffic violations that's occurring, not traffic violation, but those parking. And maybe we can recommend, are they deputized, or they're not deputized, or
No, sir, they're not deputized. They're strictly volunteers.
strictly volunteers?
Yes, sir.
So not even to wear a police uniform or something for identification purposes?
Primarily, what we do give them is a Guam Police Department ID, identification card, and it shows that they're a Cape volunteer. Early on, there was funding, again, through the federal grant, the VIPs, and they did have some uniforms and some equipment. But we don't have that federal grant fund anymore, so it's kind of, there's no funding source for it at this time.
Because I feel that if it has to do with enforcement, there should be some kind of an identification, like uniform or something like that. And that would be probably one of the incentives that would kind of generate more people to be more involved in being part of the Cape. It motivates people, like, for wearing the uniform.
Yes, sir. And so what I'll do, like I said, is I'll get back with my staff. We'll go back and look historically at what we've done with the CAPE program and what we did back then to kind of bring many volunteers to the table. And so we'll look at that. And like I said, one of the things they did have at one time was some kind of a uniform that they were authorized to wear, along with an ID and some equipment.
For the money that they when they issue citation, does that money goes to you, or does it go anywhere, to the court or where?
So it's my understanding that the fund, the disabled parking fund, is split 50-50. 50% of the fines collected go to the Guam Police Department, and 50% go to DISIT.
Okay, so maybe you can use some of that money to buy uniforms.
Yes, something, again, sir, that is something we can explore.
$600 and something like that.
Yes, sir.
That would be enough to accommodate, the two active Cape volunteer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator.
Thank you very much. And Chief, I know that you said the interest in the Cape volunteers, the reason why you had so many before was to enforce the disability parking. And I was wondering if there's been any collaboration maybe with like the Non-Communicable Disease Consortium or the Tobacco Control Board, where there are many volunteers there who have interest in enforcing the Natasha Protection Act. Maybe they can help you in the recruiting for the Cape volunteers.
Yes, ma'am. I'll talk to Major Manny Chong. Mm-hmm. So Major Manny Chong has been very engaged with that group. And so it's something that I can have him bring back to that group of people and see if they'd like to come forward and volunteer their time.
Here
Here's
he
my
is.
Major.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senators. I'd like to just give you a all the efforts that I've been doing. Okay? I've
Okay.
been doing a lot of presentations at the University of Guam with my former instructors, and I always bring up recruitment efforts, either for police officers or actually the public service within the government of Guam, Cape volunteers. When we do our town hall meetings, we've brought it up to the people attending to, if they're really passionate about everything that's going on in their village, to become a Cape volunteer. Nobody's breaking the doors down to volunteer because that word volunteer. Senator, I understand what you're saying about incentives, and like the chief said, if we have more people joining the program, giving out these citations, that will increase the pool of money that we have to give them those incentives. And of course, because it's a volunteer program, we're probably going to give them a nice uniform, maybe even matching pants, a flashlight if they need to do it at night. We're going to teach them how to defend themselves if they need to defend themselves against aggressive people that are being issued citations. Of course, we're going to teach them how to de-escalate situations. When somebody gets aggressive and they feel that they're really going to get hurt, go ahead and stop what they're doing, avoid the citation, or at least get the license plate description of the individual, then where a police officer can come in and take an assault complaint or whatever. Okay, but the Guam Police Department, we have been doing it. We're going above and beyond trying to recruit volunteers, and this is just not only myself. I know my other command staff members, when they attend these neighborhood watch meetings, they bring it up. Okay, but like I said, because of the word volunteer, nobody's breaking the door down to become volunteers.
Chief, just one more thing that just kind of got to me. You're the chief of police, and these volunteers, they're not deputized. And I would think that maybe you, as the chief of police, can deputize them by swearing them in as, and deputize them, and maybe giving them, or we need to initiate a bill to have them that restraining authority. Maybe we can do that. So what do you think about that?
Senator, that's something that again, we can discuss with our staff. There's many different things that affect the deputization of people into a program, because now we're giving them probably peace officer authority, and so there's a lot of responsibility that comes to that. And so we need to make sure that they're properly trained, they're properly equipped, and that there's going to be liability on our part to make sure that they're properly trained and equipped. So now we're probably moving them into the realm of police reserve program, or police reserve volunteers. So there's a very different dynamic involved in that.
And I would think that deputizing some of these people, right, can at least give them the authority to detain. Because if you don't deputize them, and let's say that I'm parking on a no parking sign or a handicap sign, and a K person come up to me and say, you know what, you need to, here's a citation. And I said, okay, but can you stay a little bit because there's some suspicious that is coming out regarding the identity of the person or the car itself. And I would think that maybe if you deputize these people, he can have that authority to detain that person, because if they don't have those detaining authority, then I can leave anytime I want to.
Yes, sir, and you're absolutely correct. But again, we're talking about a traffic violation or a parking violation. So, of course, we don't want to put these volunteers in a situation where they may be harmed or, hurt while in the course of trying to issue a citation for smoking, for parking, or for littering. So, so again, that's a different conversation, because now we're talking about deputizing somebody and making sure that they have the proper training beyond just issuing a citation.
So if I can comment more. When we still had 6 Cape volunteers, I had a meeting with them, and I asked them, were they willing to expand their authority? And they all said no, they just want to give citations. They don't want to enforce the law. They don't want to arrest people. They don't want to drive a patrol car. They just want to give citations and do the funeral escorts.
Thank you, Manning. Mr. Kennedy, if you will. Yeah, do you have anything for us? Or Senator, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hafide, Chairman Terlaje and the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veteran Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure, and Public Transit. My name is DeMarco Thomas Kaneni. I'm a Guam Youth Congress representative from the municipality of Orda Chalampago, and I am also the chairman of the Committee on Taxation and General Government Operations for the Guam Youth Congress. I would like to start today by thanking you guys for allowing me to speak today, and I would also like to thank Senator Moylan for the introduction of this bill. Since the beginning of my second term in the Guam Youth Congress, one of my focuses has been on fighting the youth vaping epidemic, especially through policies introduced by the Youth Congress. To date, I have introduced two specific measures, the Guam Vaping Product Tax Act of 2020, which seeks to tax the electronic nicotine delivery systems in the same manner as tobacco and alcohol, and the Prevention of Youth Vaping Act of 2020, which seeks to raise the amount of fines for those caught vaping under 21. So hopefully, in combination with these two bills, these can provide more monies for the Guam Police Department to maybe use these, to use as monies for enforcement of the Natasha Protection Act. I would like to express at least my general support for Bill 103-35, as it gives guidelines to a volunteer program set up by the Chief of Police. Our island's police force is stretched thin, as we know, and this would bolster the efforts to keep Guam clean, healthy, and vibrant for the next generation. It calls on us to look after one another and to make sure that we can all be accountable to the law, especially when the laws are designed to protect the youth from harmful effects of nicotine addiction and the inhalation of other chemicals. Through education and enforcement, hopefully we do not have to incur the same respiratory illnesses that have plagued the United States in the past couple of months. I believe something to also look into is the inclusion of the Department of Education in additional supervision of certain sections of this law to better serve the youth by detecting contraband in school and reporting it to the proper authorities when necessary. With laws currently in place, the enforcement of the vaping ban will be crucial to the health and well-being of students in school and out. I look forward to at least discussion of this bill and hope to work with the Guam legislature on future projects to continue to prevent our youth from nicotine addiction and all the harmful effects it can have on the youth of Guam and the people of Guam. Sizus Maasi.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. On your recommendation, I will go over the committee report. And I'll work on that in as far as getting some financial incentives based on your recommendation. So we'll just go ahead and do that, and I'll work on your recommendation.
Thank
Is
you,
there
Mr.
anything
Chair.
else, Manning or the chief or anything else? I just want to recognize that Deputy, I call him 4-star general, but probably the Deputy of Custom. I want to recognize and Vince, I think the Chief of Police for the airport, and all of you here. We you very much for showing up, and hopefully we can continue this dialogue in as far as trying to make sure that we do what we need to do, not only for public safety, but most importantly to kind of invigorate the things that we need to do to make sure that we cover our duties and responsibilities and continue protecting our residents. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this morning. Thank you. Senator, you don't have any. In closing, I just want to say that this public hearing on Bill number 10335 has been heard, and we will continue on the next bill. And I just want to say that because usually when we come up, we say, I give you my my email address and all that, my fiscal address and all that, but a lot of people are calling me, where is your office? Because, so my office is over at, coming from the police station in Nagana, going out to the traffic light to Route 1, right past the post office, the next building where it says Hafazava Coffee Shop. I'm on the second floor on the north side. So if I tell you my email address, and my physical address, you're not gonna find it unless you go through the Havas Alpha, go to the other side. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this morning. The time now is 9:26. 9:46. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to mention that we had, technical complications, so now we're going to move to Bill 170. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill 170-35 COR is an act to amend subsection 3114 of Chapter 3, Title 27, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, and to add subsection 51102.3 of Chapter 51, Title 17, Guam Code, annotated relative to granting administrative adjudication authority to the Guam Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. Just a little history. Last term, I chaired the Public Safety Committee, and the Post Commission expressed its desire to be granted administrative adjudication authority. After the passage of Public Laws 34-49, relative to the modification or adoption of Post Commission PFQT, and 34-136, relative to the adoption of the Post, and 34-136, relative to the adoption of the Post Commission PFQT standards, the Post has demonstrated not only its ability, but also its diligence in research and development, as it developed agency-specific fitness standards, a health and wellness program, and a physical fitness qualification test. This work was done by the Post, submitted to the Guam legislature, and was ultimately adopted by the body. The Post Commission is composed of public safety professionals who meet educational requirements and have many years of experience in their field. The Post Commission members understand the needs of law enforcement officers. They provide quality education, training, and services to aid in the development of professional peace officers and regional leaders in public safety. While through this bill, the Post will be able to amend the rules and regulations of Title 27 GAR, Chapter 3, it must be in accordance with the rulemaking procedures. Therefore, it is my intent to grant the Post Commission the administrative adjudication authority consistent with Title 5 GCA, Chapter 9, Article 3. Just to discuss it a little bit further, we had some challenges last term with our law enforcement community being able to pass basically what was the Air Force standards. And so the Post Commission members, leadership within the law enforcement and public safety community requested that each agency adopt their own post requirements. And so we did so. In this effort, we understand that the post standards today may need some tweaking, some adjustments to address the needs of the officer's fitness health, whether it be through injuries on the job, injuries while performing the physical fitness standards, or even perhaps adjusting some of the requirements to perhaps maybe increase their standards and make it a little bit more challenging for our peace officers. And so in this effort, we would like to hear testimony if you support this bill to allow the Post Commission to have their own authority to create these changes within their commission rather than having to come to the legislature every time they feel that they need to make some changes into the current statute. So basically, we are entrusting you, the body, the legislature is entrusting you with the leadership in the Post Commission to make right decisions for the people of Guam, the fitness standards for the public safety officers that you supervise, and also to ensure their safety. So just know that the post standards has, some of the post standards that were submitted do have a wellness program integrated into it. Not all of the post standards from every agency has a wellness program. And so this is an opportunity, should this bill pass, if you do support it, that you would be able to make these changes without coming to the legislature for approval. And so, Mr. Chair, if with your approval, I'd like to call the people who are here to testify forward.
Anybody that wish to come up and testify? I do have some questions regarding the post certification. Let me just start out with the chief. Chief Ignacio, do you have any insight in as far as the administrative adjudication recommendation that needs to impart some of the things that they need to do to make it easier for post certification?
Senators, good morning and thank you again and to all the senators that are here today. So we'd like to thank Senator Nelson for introducing this bill. This is something that the members of the Post Commission had asked to bring forth to the legislature so that the Post Commission and its members has the authority to make amendments to the post laws so that we can better manage the post commission program and the mandates that are required under the post law. And so I think if we go back in time to when there was an amendment that needed to be made regarding the physical fitness qualifications test, I think the prior chief of police and many other members of the Post Commission had to come down here and defend and provide testimony on making the amendments to the PFQT at the time. So it's a very long, arduous, and tedious process. And we recognize that we all have different needs as members of the Post Commission. We all have different requirements, and that it would be probably in the interest of being more efficient and effective if the Post Commission had the authority vested in it to make changes to the post requirements as needed to meet the mandates of the individual agencies. And so that's pretty much the impetus behind this bill that's being offered today.
Chief, I'm just a little bit concerned about the post certification because as it stands right now, I believe that, for example, if you resign today and you want to come back to work tomorrow, do you have to get recertified?
You would need to have a post certification. Yes, that's the requirement for at least for my agency as an executive line agency. What the DOA requires is that they provide a post certificate. And so depending on when you join the agency that you're trying to get reemployed with, you may be either grandfathered into the system or you may have to meet the requirements of post.
Because I know there are several people that resign from work and they because they wanted to venture into some other skills or business. But according to DOA, they cannot allow this person to come back to work and get his prior job back, and they have to go through the recertification. And this person just kind of resigned about maybe less than a month and wanted to go back. But according to DOA, he has to get recertified. Is there anything in line to rectify that?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. Again, I know through my experience as the chief of police, what they do require of me is to make sure that the applicant who's trying to gain reemployment provides the post certificate, and that's administered to the post commission with the executive director and his staff. So we do have a procedure in place. There are forms, standard forms that we've developed as the post commission that the employee fills out, and then they submit to the post commission, the executive director, and they verify all the information is correct, and they verify that the training is received by this person. And once he signs off on it, he gets a certificate saying that he is post certified.
Okay, another thing, because I usually would attend the post meeting up at GCC, and what I plan to do is maybe talk to get some insight from some of you regarding going through the department or agency and do their post certification on their own. I don't know if you agree with that, Chief, but you have some of us, right? On the post requirement, you have to go certain miles and meet the timeline. So I was saying that maybe during the time that you get hired or working for the police department or law enforcement agency, you can do your own pace, and work. And during the time you're working, you can be doing your own pace to be certified, get recertified. Because I believe in 2020, if you don't meet that certification, you're out of a job. And we need to change that. We need to change that, because I think the law is specific on that 2020, everybody have to get recertified. If you're not certified, you're out of a job. I don't know if you're aware of that, because I know that you're part of the administrator of the post certification, Chief. But give me your insight on that one, because I feel that we need to do something like that to really, for an individual to go at his or her own pace in meeting some of those requirements under the post.
Yes, sir. So I believe you are correct that there is a deadline to become post certified. And so most of us here at the table, as chiefs or leaders of our agency or organization, we are working with the post commission to make sure that we go through the listing of all our employees, just to make sure that they're either grandfathered, they meet the grandfathering clause in the post commission requirements, or that when at the time that they join, that all the classes and courses that they took do meet the mandates of the post commission requirements. So it's something that we're all working on right now to meet that deadline, to ensure that everybody is post certified.
And you're right, Chief, because we need to do that grandfathered in clause in there, because it's not there. I don't think so. I don't think there's any changes on those requirements on the timeline that you need to be certified. So I was thinking either we go grandfather's clause or leave it to the agency to just do their own post certification at their own pace. Those are the two that I would recommend. Go ahead, Chief.
Good morning, Honorable Senator Pedo Terlaje, Honorable Senator Tilena Nelson, and Honorable Senator Amanda Shelton. My name is Vincent Perez. I'm the Chief of Customs. Now, in reference to the post-certification process, the law allows us there's a provision in there that allows for the grandfathering. And as the Chief of Police had mentioned earlier, there is a process in which all the law enforcement agencies under the Post Commission are currently submitting their applications for post certification. So we're almost like maybe 80 to 90% complete on that, and what we're waiting for is the final approval from the Post Commission. Now, going back to your question on whether or not we can perhaps delegate the specific entities to do its own post-training, it's my understanding that at least with Customs many years ago, we were delegated the authority to hold classroom trainings for GCC. I believe that one of the requirements is that we turned in applications for adjunct professorship with the Guam Community College. So I think that that's something that we can delve on and investigate further. But going back to the intent of Bill 170-35 COR, I was there when we had issues in trying to establish fitness standards. And I was there as I was the co-chair for the Post Commission, and we worked with Senator Nelson's office because it was very hard and very problematic to try and initiate these types of standards when there really is no authority. So in discussions, we ended up with that Air Force physical fitness test that was a little difficult in its implementation. And if we had the authority back then to be able to make certain amendments, we would not have needed to go to the legislature to try and make an amendment. It makes it a whole lot more efficient and effective when the Post Commission, which is comprised of law enforcement professionals and the senior heads of each agency with the subject matter expertise and the knowledge to be able to make certain decisions that if you left it outside of the Post Commission, every single time there's going to be an amendment, and I'm going to use the current physical fitness standards as an example. Let's say we get to a level where all of our officers are meeting that certain time, and you're saying, hey, you know what we need to do is we need to decrease the time for the fitness test. You know what we're going to have to do right now? We're going to have to go back to the honorable legislature and submit a proposal and then go through the process of going through public hearings and final voting and then enactment of that particular amendment. So if we're able to get the authority now, we can forego many of the cumbersome processes that are necessary to effectuate necessary administrative actions on rulings that the commission deems is necessary.
So, Chief, you know, the main purpose of this particular bill is to grant the administrative adjudication authority.
Yes.
For not waiver, but the authority for you to do
Yes.
your own thing in as far as going forward with a post requirement.
And we need that.
Okay, so I guess the senator and I will work on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Vince,
you.
do you have anything?
Good morning, Senators. I've been a part of this committee for a while. I've just made the airport police as a chief there. And for far too long, I believe that when I was with the marshals, we were able to pass the AFI, I believe it was at a 75% passing rate. If you go over there today and look at some of them, a lot of them were injured thereafter because of the sacrifice and their due diligence to get in shape. If we had this law in place back then, I truly believe those individuals that are injured today would not have received those injuries based upon some of the changes that could be made. And so when this law was enacted, and I wouldn't say forced upon us, or you can say that, but back then, there wasn't any physical fitness programs that were in place unless the agencies had them in place. And so we had individuals that were on the job for over 20, 30 years, and here we are making them go through the PT portion of it. And so I think that we should have at that time considered the ones that were actually going out in retirement and let them, with some dignity retire that way. But a lot of the guys ended up retiring early, resigning, because they felt that at that particular point in time, they weren't going to be able to pass the PFQT. And so this bill allows us, the subject matter experts in the room, to be able to make that determination, whether it's academic or whether it's with the physical portion of their testing. And just like law enforcement, everything evolves, and you start to see even standards change across the United States. And so this will give us the ability to be able to keep up with the standards across the nation and allow us the ability to be able to, as a committee, make those decisions for our agencies. So I'm in support of this bill.
Thank you, Vince. I just want to, because, the chief here has been one of the administrators for the post. And I was just thinking, because the post, in as far as the physical requirements, I think that was tailored under the Air Force requirements, right? Air Force. But the thing is, and I retired from the military, right? And of course, as you get older, the lesser time they need to give you to meet that requirement, right, Chief? I mean, at my age, right? Let's say that I need to do a mile run in maybe like 2.5 minutes, right? So the older you get, at maybe like 70 years old, the older you get, is there any plan to reduce the requirement? Because right now, I cannot meet that at my age, like 2.5 minutes. Is there any plan to reduce it to at least, increase the time to at least 3.5 minutes? Do you have that in mind? Are you thinking about that, Chief? Because I know you're just about my age, too.
Yes, sir. And yes, sir, I'm closer to your age now than before. And I would like to say, Senator, that I probably need 10 minutes instead of 2 minutes. But, Senator, each of us agencies up here at the table now, when we went through this exercise in the last legislature, we all adopted our own standards for physical fitness. So there's not one standard across the board for everybody. So we have our POPAT, which is the Police Officers Physical Agility Test. Customs has their own version. The Fire Department has their own. Corrections has their own version. So we've all developed a physical fit agility test that meets the requirements of the agency. And there was a lot of work that was put into that, a lot of research, a lot of communications back and forth with the legislature and within the agencies itself to develop agency-specific physical fitness tests to meet the requirements of the agency.
Chief, and I'm not really saying that we should, because we can never reduce the standard of law enforcement. Lo David ifan tafangay maasin ni man amko anesta amko mi David yun na di chance do continua machotsu na para pai publiko. Sa eno mas dinansin gayegi na sultan ay para tatsogo na yan chance ni man amko do tunga na gayogi na category gi anegagyo. Is there anything else, sir?
I know we support the bill that you're presenting right now. I think that each agency should have that authority to make changes to their program. Our last discussion at the Post, allowing a succession plan of rank, minimum requirements was very important. So the academic and the tactical knowledge is very important to developing new leadership. But it's also important that we maintain the physical fitness side. For us, with GFD, one of the things that we did was 2019 was all diagnostics. It was about educating the employees of the policy that changes from the old military run sit-up walk to the new 1047 policy. Then we put a time period in that to make sure that everybody was aware of the new changes, what's required. Then we allowed a walk process of implementing this at the station house, allowing employees to go and supervisors to monitor the development, okay? Then we've come up to 2020, and it's about the tests. Now we're rolling out. But with us, we've took a proactive approach in that our message to our employees in the Guam Fire Department is we care about your health. So before an individual can test, they have to take a self-medical survey. So we talk about the older firefighters. Most of them are rough, tough, whatever, right? But probably haven't gone to a doctor in 10, 15 years. So what we require is that at the immediate supervisor level, that they ask a self-medical survey and for that employee to be honest on maybe some of the issues he might have, right? If there are any issues that might be brought up, we get them help. We either tell them to go to their personal physician, get a physical, or we refer them to public health and schedule something in that nature. But if we don't address what an employee tells us and they end up testing, what we don't want is employees to die at an exercise, right? So our message was more health organized. But the implementation of our 1047 is, it is what it is. We're going to do it. Doesn't matter your age. I encourage, it doesn't matter how old they are, that if they do fail, one thing about everybody up here, our job will break us. It is a fact. Lifting, moving, jumping, this job will break you at one point of your career. So, going back to your report for us, once we are done with testing all 240 firefighters, we'll prepare an after post analysis to show the health of our department. And with the previous ones that we've done, I think Senator, I sent you one. Again, it shows that ages 18 to 30, there's really no issues. Many are very strong. 30 to 40, still pretty strong. But as we get into the 50 and higher, you'll see that medical issues, profiles, things of this nature start affecting us. So we want that to be known. And what we do not want is to have employees go on long-term profile just to stretch themselves out. It is cheaper and easier, in our view, that you allow them to walk away at a certain age with so many service years. So to give you that data for your information, that's what we are. So again, going back to Senator Nelson's proposal here, we are definitely all for it because every agency is specific, task-orientated, right? We're not going to be handcuffing or shooting. We're going to be braking and hauling, right? So ARF works very well with us. Actually, they've adopted ours. Very proactive with our communication with their training officers to make sure that it's universal. But again, definitely in support of this bill. I think it's very common sense and good for us to address any issues that we might face as an agency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today, and thank you for your hard work. Mr. Napati, I wanted to address a comment that you made earlier about the standards in the past, where it was basically just a blanket standards across the board, and you were losing people because they were injuring themselves while trying to meet that standard. And so this was one of the primary focuses on why we were trying to push for each agency to implement their own physical fitness qualification test. We understood that many people within our peace officer community had challenges and to meeting the standard, which wasn't really relative to their job function. And so in an effort to create a stronger force, in an effort to ensure that we protected our public safety officers, that they were still able to maintain their jobs, that we moved forward with this implementation of the bill. And so now, leadership of the public safety community, we entrust you to make these decisions to fit your agency's needs, to understand the requirements of your subordinates or the people that foster our community, and to ensure that you protect them as far as their well-being, their health, and address their issues, so that if they would need to retire, they are well provided for with the work that they have contributed, for the sacrifices they have done in our community. And I don't know what those challenges are, only you do, and so you'll be able to capture these issues to help your workforce, to help our public safety officers, and that is the intent, right? That is our primary intent, is to make sure that they are protected, because that's our job. We protect those who protect us. And so I want to thank you for your hard work, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill. I appreciate it. It was a long time coming, but now we're making movement, and so I want to thank all of you, and thank you to our public safety officers for the work that you do for us. Thank you.
Vince, I just wanted to ask you this because, you know, they raised the question on reservists, and I kind of left out the, you know, the 42 hours versus the $500. And I just wanted to ask you that, because I'll be working on that bill to equalize, you know, what was given to GPD and DOC and others. And I'll be calling you up, and we'll work on that to try to tailor that out and equate what GPD reservists are getting with your people. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Senator.
I'd like to thank all of you for your participation in today's public hearing on Bill number 103 and Bill number 170. If you have any written testimony, you can email it to Senator Pedo at senatorjpterlaje.com, or hand deliver it to my office, to his office at 140 Espino Avenue, Bridgepoint Building, Hagåtña, Guam, 96910. Thank you. It is now 10:18. This public hearing is adjourned.